And we will now move into the last session of today. Thank you very much to the speakers. And I will try to share again. And there is a lot of sunshine here, which is very nice, but very hard for me. So now we move into the last part of this event, which is the EDF and IAAP updates. And unfortunately, the G3ICT president and IAAP managing director, Dr. Christopher Lee, is unable to attend today. So instead of our lovely and charming managing director who knows everything, you will have to listen to me briefly when it comes to the IAAP update. But first, we turn to the European Disability Forum and Daniel Casas, who will give us a policy update from the disability organization perspective.
Hi, thank you very much, Susanna, and hello, everyone. First of all, congratulations for today. I've been following all the event, and it's been amazing in terms of ideas and speakers. So as you know, so at the European Disability Forum, we are an organization that represents persons with disabilities, and we work on many different areas, from education to transport to social policy. So on the policy update, I wanted to focus on some maybe transversal issues that we are working on and that we will be working on in the months to come. And I think it can be summed up in three concepts, which is vision, money, and rules. So when it comes to vision, I want to talk about the European Disability Strategy. For those of you who are familiar with the European Commission, the way it works is that normally for each policy domain, the Commission has a strategy setting out the vision and the goals that have to be achieved. And normally there's a list of specific actions, big initiatives or legislation to achieve such goals. So when it comes to disability, we have the European Disability Strategy that was adopted, I think, in 2021. And then it will have a duration of 10 years. This document has been really important because some of the key actions that we've had at the European level in terms of disability come from this document. I'm talking about the European Disability Card or the Accessible EU Center. The thing is that we only had actions up until 2025. And one of the things that we as EDF told the Commission is that, okay, you need to come up with some new initiatives that run until 2030. And the good news is that last year, the commissioner in charge of disability portfolio, Labib, she confirmed that the European Commission will propose new actions. You know that our motto at the European Disability Forum and from the disability community is that we want to be involved in all the actions that concern us directly. And for this reason, we have already put forward a proposal of things that the Commission could do to continue implementing the United Nations on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This document is public. I will share it on the chat, but I can briefly mention some of those initiatives. I think that Catherine, in the keynote speech at the beginning, she mentioned our call for a European Accessibility Agency, similar to the US Access Board, because we have, basically today we've seen, right, we have legislation, but there's a lot of discussions that come with it in terms of expertise, standards, monitoring, and we really think that an agency could really have an added value. So this is one of our calls for the Commission and the strategy. We also want the Commission to act on assistive technologies, because right now there is no internal market for this. So if you want to access a certain piece of assistive technology, there will be many differences between member states in terms of cost or assistive technologies that are available. So we are also asking the Commission to take action on this matter and kind of build the internal market for this type of technologies. And another area that we are also asking the Commission to act in the future of the strategy is freedom of movement for persons with disabilities. There are still many barriers when a person with a disability wants to work in another member state or live or study, basically because there's no portability for disability benefits, and you need to spend months going through the disability recognition before you can access this important support that most persons with disabilities need. So these are just three ideas, but that we have kind of proposals for many different areas, and we hope that the Commission takes some of them when proposing the new actions for the strategy. The second point that we are working on as EDF is money, and here I'm talking about the European budget. So the European Union not only is about rules and legislation, it has also a big budgetary capacity to basically invest money in different areas. And for those working on disability and accessibility, we know that the right decisions need to be taken in terms of budget to basically ensure greater inclusion and accessibility. This summer, the Commission unveiled the proposal for the budget, and our colleagues from EDF are working through it to basically assess what the situation is. But what you have to keep in mind is that finally it's the member states who will decide how EU money is being spent on. Some of the things that we will prioritize in our advocacy action, especially with the Parliament and the member states, when deciding on the text that explain how the budget must be spent, is that we want enough resources for social cohesion, and this is important because we are in a context in Europe where there's other priorities coming up, and we believe that this should not be forgotten. We will also stress the importance of keep on funding civil society organizations working on human rights. And you know that the situation in certain member states is critical and that sometimes NGOs are being attacked. So it's important that support continues to come from Europe. We will also continue pushing for conditionality, so that only EU money is given to projects that really respect obligations in terms of the United Nations on Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and also accessibility. And the last point that I want to talk about is rules. So today we are celebrating the Web Accessibility Directive, which, if I'm not mistaken, was one of the first pieces of European legislation focusing on accessibility. And after that, there's been new pieces of legislation that have kind of created this European framework on accessibility, and this is key. So what we will be doing on the months to come in this field. Well, when it comes to, for example, the European Accessibility Act or the Web Accessibility Directive, I think that there will be work on the implementation part, on trying to understand what's going on at the national level, to highlight where there are the problems, and to also support in enforcement, something that we've also been discussing here. But not only this, some existing legislation will also be revised that's relevant to accessibility. I'm talking here about the Audiovisual Media Services Directive or the Electronic Communications Code, which have important accessibility provisions. So here we will keep an eye basically to inform policymakers on how this legislation has been working so far and basically make proposals for improvement. And as you can imagine, as an organization representing the interests of persons with disabilities, we will be doing our best to ensure that there's strong accessibility provision in these laws. And then looking into the future, I mean, I don't think there will be any specific piece of legislation dealing only on accessibility, but something that we are doing as EDF is to make sure that whenever there's new legislation in any policy area, accessibility is there. And this also will be part of our work. We've seen this with the Digital Euro, with the Artificial Intelligence Act, and I think it's going to be part of our actions with any new legislation in the digital domain. So these are the three topics that I want to present on the policy update. And of course, if there's any question, I'm happy to go more into detail, but I prefer to keep it general. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. That's a very good overview of, I think, what we consider the main points. So I also just wanted to add that also in the cybersecurity legislation, accessibility is now being added into the standards, which is really good. And I think that that even didn't come from the community, or maybe it did as well, but at least it was really, really pushed for by the Commission. So something is happening here when it comes to accessibility needs to be kind of a horizontal part of everything. I think that's kind of a change that I have seen, or maybe I'm hoping to see, but it's at least happening now. So So I don't see any questions for Daniel so far. So I will just make a very brief update from IAAP point of view. I do not know everything, so I cannot do what Christopher was supposed to do. But what I do know is that despite the kind of uncertain and unsecure environment that we are currently in, politically and elsewhere, IAAP is actually thriving. And before the end of this year, we will have issued more than 10,000 professional certifications. And I think that does make a difference. And I also know that we have, at global level, we have piloted different variations and alternatives on micro or nano training courses, similar things, providing courses in small chunks for people to digest on the bus or on the go. And we haven't found the perfect technical setup yet, but the positive feedback on the content shows that this is really a substantial demand. And it came originally from many of our large organizational members, so platinum members and so on, with thousands of staff, because I mean, we are maybe most known for professional certification, but everyone is not an accessibility expert. So even if that is a sad thing, but I mean, most people are not experts. So a small proportion of the employees may be suitable to take the exam or the certification, or else in another way specialize in accessibility. But every staff member, or at least many of them, should have basic knowledge about disabilities and accessibility. And I think we've heard that several times today. So that is what I think has been a gap in the market, and that IAAP is now trying to meet better than we have done before. So what is called professional development, and that is including foundational courses as part of the IAAP member benefits. So I'm excited to see how that pans out. In Europe, where I'm a bit closer to the fire, we have also established more strategic partnerships, for example, with the AAATE, the Association of the Advancement of AT in Europe, which is an important step forward towards even more of the scientific research projects that we have been involved in lately. And the collaboration also means that IAAP members get a discount on AAATE conferences. And we did recently sign a joint declaration to ensure web accessibility becomes part of higher education curricula. And Catherine was mentioning that this morning as well. So another positive topic I would like to mention is the exploration phase that a group of French-speaking volunteers have been carrying out in the last 8-9 months to investigate the market demand for a French-speaking chapter of IAAP, so similar to the German-speaking chapter we have. And this chapter would then cover France, Luxembourg, and French-speaking parts of Belgium and Switzerland. And this group has just submitted their report, and I'm not the person making decisions on where to start new chapters, but what I want to highlight is the fantastic engagement among those people involved. And that goes not only for Le Groupe Francophone, but also for many other volunteers that I've met and collaborated with during the years in IAAP. We have regional councils, committees, certification, translation, content updates of the body of knowledge and exams, and all of these activities are fully dependent on subject matter experts volunteering. And to me, it's absolutely amazing to see the commitment in this community. It really makes me hopeful and optimistic for the future. So if you want to hear the real IAAP State of the Union kind of speech, then do listen to Christopher at the IAAP Day on M-Enabling in October. So with that, I would like to call for the panelists for this session. We have a I think I should maybe share this so we can see the names in a good way also. So Daniel will come back to be in the panel, and then we have 3 distinguished members of IAAP and certification holders. So instead of having me saying that everything is fantastic in IAAP, you can now hear from the actual people who are members and certified the truth about this. So we will talk about the expectations and so on. And we have a good, not a perfectly gender balanced panel here, but we have a lot of other good balances. So we have Biljana Michel, who is a web accessibility specialist in Temesis, based in France, but originally from Serbia, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm covering 2 countries there. And then we have Ruut Kiiskilä, who is an accessibility specialist with GoFore in Finland. And then we have Verónica Beltrán, who is a digital accessibility consultant at Adesso, based in Germany, but originally from Spain. So I'm counting you as 2 countries as well. So I'm trying to check all the EU member states here, and the family and friends that we call them around the EU. So you are, of course, specifically selected because you are so charming people, but also that you come from slightly different sectors, so to speak. So Biljana is from an accessibility expert company, relatively small. Ruut is from a more generic ICT company that have, I think, 1,500 staff or something like that, and headquartered in Finland, but also offices in other parts of Europe. And Verónica is from a really big organization, maybe 150,000, or now I'm guessing. So a much larger organization that, of course, creates all sorts of websites and ICT systems, but also have a very strong accessibility team, just as GoFore has. So you have slightly different perspectives, and you also have slightly different certifications. So that's very good for the discussion here. So I would like to start with, what is the most valuable part of being an IAAP member, or IAAP have the certification, or what do you enjoy most? Kind of what's the positive thing here? Verónica, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here to share some knowledge. So for me, one of the highlights about being an IAAP member is like the connections that you can get through the forums. I think it's always very vivid where someone is asking, can someone help me about doing something? How do you do it? And then there's always someone popping up in the next 24 hours, trying to give some bits of advice, and that's really nice. And also, I would like to say, because a couple of years ago, I did like for IAAP, I did a workshop. It was how to start in the accessibility field, and there's like a lot of people who want to start in this field. They come from different other fields, and I found this very, very interesting because it's the case of myself. And I have to say that it's very enriching coming from other fields and to try to make things accessible, not only like what we said before, like banks and insurances, but something else, which is maybe fun, like video games and other things. So I would say like also, AWAP has a good resource also about finding jobs, and there are sometimes job positions there. So I would say those are the 2 highlights for me.
Thank you. And Ruut, from your perspective, what's the value?
Yeah, for me, if I think about the membership in general, there are 2 things that come to mind. First, the knowledge sharing events, such as this one right here, all the trainings and webinars, because it's, of course, important to keep your knowledge up to date. And I can very rarely participate live in anything, but I'm very glad there are usually these recordings I can watch later on, and cannot wait to see the sessions of today that I didn't see before. So this is definitely number 1 for me. But I think the second thing is simply the international aspect of it. Personally, it feels nice to be a part of an international community. And as mentioned, the connections community especially, I think, provides a type of possibility to talk about different types of challenges that go with our line of work with a large group of international colleagues. So it's great to have access to this kind of shared knowledge base, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah, there's always somebody. There's always
Yes.
somebody somewhere who have stumbled over the same issue somewhere, so you can always get kind of support or discussions. That's true.
Yes, for sure.
So thank you. And Biljana, what's your perspective on this? What's the best part?
The best part, well, I will not repeat what the other people said because it's very similar. But as I have a multicultural background, for me it was very important to be part of the group of people that share the same passion as me and that they are all over the world. I had opportunity to be present in the Paris for the meeting of the IAAP, and I really loved it. And when I came home, my husband asked me so how it was. I said, it was so perfect. All people were like me. Talking about accessibility, speaking English with the accent, and sharing experience, knowledge. I want to also talk about my certificate. I don't know if the same problem exists in the other countries, but in France, we have a lot of new specialists that are coming a bit from nowhere. So I find it really important to have certificate and to validate my knowledge, so that people, when they hire me, they know that I know what I'm saying, what I'm talking about, and voilà, from me.
Yeah, very good. So, Verónica, did you want to chime in on the certification piece, or?
Yeah, I wanted to point that out because what Biljana was saying. So actually, since there were few courses or university degrees around accessibility, I think it's especially important to have something which is kind of international, or that people know when you say I have the CPACC, people know what you're talking about. So it's a way to kind of standardize the knowledge and know, okay, this is the level of the person, like even applying for jobs or when talking about accessibility in general. So I think that's a good a good chance to talk the same common language. Otherwise, like in different countries, things are being done differently. So how are we gonna try to compare with each other when we are trying to find a job, or knowing what are our skill gaps as well? So I think that's super great. That's what I wanted to point out about what Biljana was saying. Yeah.
And Ruut, I know in Finland, the certifications have really become a thing, especially in public procurement. I've heard that, I've seen the statistics there. It seems like the Finnish governments really think it's a good way to to pick and select their suppliers. I don't know if you want to speak to that or something about your own certification.
Well, I have to agree with Biljana and Verónica. Like, I think it's very important to be able to prove somehow that you are at the expected general knowledge level of accessibility professionals. And at least for me, it was and is very valuable. And I feel that the IAAP certifications particularly are held in high regard. As you said, in Finland, I think it's becoming more and more common to include these certifications in procurement and these kind of things. Yes.
So Daniel, we are having kind of the reversed relationship, because we are a member of you and you're not a member of us. But we were talking about being member of each other and how that would work. But what's the most important part of the collaboration between IAAP and EDF as you see it? Or what do you enjoy most of this?
No, thanks, Susanna. So, I mean, basically, you can imagine that as an accessibility policy officer, the relationship that we have with accessibility professionals is quite, I would say, close, because accessibility is something that's really technical, and where we really see an added value of bringing the two communities, which sometimes are blurred because accessibility professionals are also, in most cases, persons with disabilities. But where we are really, I would say, happy about, and that we really think it's important. I think in today's event, there's been several examples of how like being members of each other's organization can be so positive. You talked about the statement of overlays, and this is key. I mean, we are, I would say, big stakeholders when it comes to accessibility, and sometimes we need to tell policymakers how things need to be done and understood. And I think this is a good example of basically showing the way and explaining what the community needs, and having also the technical expertise behind it to justify these arguments. I think that another point that has also been mentioned today is the need for accessibility professionals. I think it's one of the conclusions that we have from the Web Accessibility Directive, is that there's a big need in Europe about that, and there's been joint actions such as the statement from the Nicosia Declaration, where accessibility professionals, organizations of persons with disabilities are calling for stronger action in this domain. And I think what is key is that EAP shows what an accessible professional looks like. So we're not just making a general claim on what we need. We are actually we know how this can be done. We just need the political impetus behind this. I'm sure, I mean, I have other ideas for things that can be done on the future or challenges that we have. So I know that this will continue, but I wanted to flag these issues.
Yeah, and I agree. It's really, we are quite powerful when we move together. So the end user community and then the profession, and when we kind of approach the commission, they kind of listen to what we say.
Yeah.
So that's quite powerful. So thank you for always being so supportive of our ideas and things like that. So, but we are, I am sure, not perfect. So what could we do better, or what could we do more of? Biljana, do you have any constructive feedback or ideas for the future?
Well, I have two stuffs. First, we all said how we appreciate that we are all together and all that, but I find it a bit difficult to engage the communication with other members. We have the EIAAP connections, but the communication is not, let's say, easy. We need to, it's a forum, we need to ask the question, we need to wait for the answers and all that. It would be maybe good to have some place where it would be, let's say, easy and faster to communicate between us all over the world, and eventually that we are able to help each other, to share the knowledge, to share the experience, because in accessibility sometimes it's not easy. We are doing a lot of job that at the end no one cares. So there are a lot of frustrations. It would be easy also to share that part of our job with other people. This is something that I have need, let's say my personal need. And second one is, but it's already on the road because I wanted to ask to have, we have the formations to pass the certificate, but it's a missing to have small formations on the small subject.
Trainings.
Yes.
Training.
Yes, small trainings, especially in the part for web accessibility. Let's say that we have a subject about images, then we have a subject about videos and all that, so that even people that are starting in accessibility can learn, or the people that this is not their job, because very often as accessibility expert, we ask, okay, you need to do this, but the person actually don't know what it needs to be done. So this would also help, I think, and it will maybe answer this need that we need more accessibility experts.
I think it's an eternal churn of people, but definitely we'll try our best to make sure we can train more people. So, Verónica, what's your input for IAAP? And I promise I will bring this forward to Christopher, even if I can't change things.
Yeah, for me, there are basically two things. One of the things is about applying for the certification. So I have the feeling that sometimes it's very stiff. So either you have this amount of years that you have been working on something, otherwise you're kicked out of the process. So already like the first, like applying for it, it's already like the first barrier, I would say. Even for me, like I tried several times, once or twice for the WAS, and I was always rejected. And then I would like to say that everybody's also, because we are talking about accessibility, right? So everybody's learning in different ways. Everybody has their different process of learning. So sometimes it would be best just to trust the candidate. I mean, we don't want to spend $450 just for the sake of it. So if we are confident that we can take this certification, I think it must be possible in a way, and not to have too many barriers in order to achieve it, because nobody would want to just spend this money for the sake of it and just fail the exam. So these at times feel a bit stiff. I had the same with the ADS. In the end, I tried to convince them. I managed to convince them and I passed the exam. So that's the perfect proof that everybody's learning differently. And we try to do our best. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, which I found good, it's like if you're not a native speaker, you get more time for the exam. That's perfectly fine as an accommodation, but it would be great, since there are so many members, that little by little we will start like not only translating, but also like offering them offering the book of knowledge or everything in the language, because having more time doesn't necessarily mean that you will get better at the language. You know what I mean? Like, you will have more time to think about it, but it also means that the people who are taking those exams, they also get more tired, because it's not the same if you're a native speaker, within 1 hour you can do it, or being like a foreigner and then you have 2 hours, which is great. That's more time for yourself, but it's also like double the time that your head is working and double the stress that you are under with. So that's the two things. So having the possibility to reach as many people as possible through the language, and also like that, to be a bit more flexible with who can take the exam or not. Yeah.
Thank you. I have heard that actually applying for the exam is much more difficult than actually sitting for the exam, which, if that is true, then we haven't really succeeded. So this is kind of new, not new criticism, but important. And I think I'm not a specialist in this, but I know that because we are part of the international Institute of Credentialing Excellence. So there is a way, we don't invent the way we do professional certification. That's part of kind of a standardized way of doing that. And there is something with how many percentage and how much experience and all of that. So there are some rules around this. So that could be part of it. That said, of course, we should not be seen as stiff. But it's important that I think the community, at least when we started IAAP, we were quite clear on that it shouldn't be just a theoretical thing. You need to show that you have actually met people with disabilities and can do things actively. So there is a balance there, but I know there are examples of people who really should have been approved to take the exam and that haven't been. And I know the certification team is really working on that. It's not super easy to fix, and for the translations, I mean, I'm all for it. We are doing translations as much as we can. It's a daunting task. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of resources, and we need to have quite a few volunteers that are bilingual to do it in a good way. But we are moving. I mean, we've done a lot in German. We are now doing French, and we have done Spanish also before. So it's taking time, but it's not like we don't know it. We would very much like to have all the material in all the languages, but somebody has to make it, keep it updated and so on. So Ruut, what are your inputs? What can we do better?
Yeah, I've talked to some people lately who've told me that accessibility in general seems almost like a closed community in a way, and I've thought about it, I guess, ever since. I don't think we aim to be that way at all, but maybe the subject matter, of course, tends to get fairly specific and technical pretty quickly. So it can feel a bit difficult for new people, and of course, accessibility professionals need to be able to discuss these challenging topics together. It's one of the main purposes that we have this organization. But yeah, maybe I'd like to see the IAAP being more open and somehow ease the way into accessibility for everyone interested. That would be one thing. And also, just as a comment, I've seen on LinkedIn and some other social medias that there's been some discussion about the difficulty of maintaining the certifications. So this is one topic also that I understand that is definitely not easy. And partly I do agree with that criticism, because it's definitely not easy. But then again, I do feel the value of the IAAP certification is partly that it's not a one-off performance, and you have to maintain your knowledge. So again, a difficult balance, but something I wanted to bring up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's also a recurring thing. I think we have tried to mitigate part of that, at least with the new portal. So some complaints that came early on, it was really much more difficult before. So if you have been frustrated before, please try again, because now with the new portal, at least it's much easier to report on your credits. And just for Verónica, I forgot when you talked that you said nobody would pay to sit for an exam that you don't that you can't meet or something like that. But that's not really true. We are approached, and this is not one-off. This is happening quite regularly. Companies that want to buy the certifications. they think it's something, they think it's a diploma that you can. So if we just pay, I have these 20 staff that we need, because we know that in procurement we will lose if we don't. So can we just pay for these people? And it's like, no, that's not really. So, and I think you can be upset about that approach, of course, but I think it's a sign that we have succeeded. Now the exams are so kind of recognize that people actually want to pay for just to, you know, to have it like a badge. So if I turn to Daniel, what could we do more of or better in the collaboration or IAAP as such? What can we improve?
So it's difficult for me to add after this really concrete and down to earth, I would say, proposals. I was kind of thinking of a more kind of general answer and also linked to the policy work that we do. And I think it can be maybe applied to EAP, but also to accessibility professionals in general from our experience and needs as a disability community. So one thing that we are discussing often and that has been discussed today is standards. And we want to be involved in standardization processes. But one of the challenges that we have is that the standardization meetings are pretty complex and technical. And we often rely on the support of accessibility experts that in most cases do it free of charge and voluntary. And that's often the only way that we can convey the message. So I think potential cooperation or collaboration there to really bridge the gap between the needs and the expertise in such important discussions, because we often don't find someone to represent us on specific technical discussions. And that's where we need engineers, architects that understand accessibility and that help us also frame the message. Then another issue, maybe it's enforcement and monitoring. Of course, it's not our primary role, but to really understand how all the legislation that we have in Europe is being applied on the ground, sometimes we need evidence and we need experts to support us sometimes assess, okay, how are specific sector in a specific country complying with the Accessibility Act? Are there any gaps? Is there any learnings and recommendations? I mean, this can raise awareness also in the importance of accessibility professionals within companies and also support public authorities. So I would say that these are areas where I see potential, because right now, I mean, 10 years ago, we didn't have this framework in Europe. And now we're having all those discussions because we have something to build in, to build on, and where we hope, and we are already doing to collaborate with accessibility professionals, but that maybe we can maybe streamline more, because I'm sure not only in Europe, in each member state, this cooperation is needed, and that's something where both type of communities can really find a way together. I don't know if it was useful or not, but I was thinking about these things today and wanted to maybe raise it now.
You know, I think it's very important, and actually we haven't done that really. We haven't kind of made a call for volunteers to support EDF. We could do something together on that. I'm sure that there are also people in our community who would benefit from working closer to people with disabilities, and maybe who do not have any, you know, friends or colleagues with disabilities. So with that, I mean, that I think it's a brilliant idea. Let's try to work more on that. So I will stay with you, Daniel. If we look into the future, how can we best support your members or other organizations representing people with disabilities or individual persons with disabilities? Was it the IAAP or the accessibility community at large? We can collaborate on standards and volunteer and so on, but what can we do as a community to make sure that we are as supportive as possible to you?
That's a really good question. I mean, I would say that what's important is at the national level, and I've heard that that you have chapters all over different chapters in Europe, and I think that something important is that there is good contact between these chapters and the national members of persons with disabilities. Because I think that at the European level, we have really good cooperation, we are in touch, and we have different projects that we can build on. And I would say that it would be great that this thing can be replicated with the different chapters. I'm sure this is already the case, but would be for me something that I think there would be an added value to have similar cooperation with the national members to achieve similar outcomes, but nationally, because there's still many things going on at the different member states.
Yeah, and it is going on in some of the member states, not all of them. And just as the EDF members may have different maturity levels when it comes to accessibility, to sometimes these discussions are really hard to have with some of the member states. And it's the same thing in some of the member states. We have only 1 or 2 members. So, I mean, we are not very strong in all parts of Europe either. So I think we share some of the same problems there. But that's a very good point. So I wrote that down as well. Let's try to do the national or local collaboration better. So I will turn to Ruut now. How can we best support the accessibility community? What would you like us to focus on in the future, or concrete now?
Once again, I'm thinking of supporting these absolute beginners to accessibility and like how that could be improved. I'm personally doing studies in cognitive science at the moment, and I have fellow students who have been asking me about accessibility, how to get a career going, etc. Like younger people who want to get in the business maybe I just haven't found it, but I don't know if there's like a clear path for these kind of newbies to accessibility. Maybe some clearer guidance could be useful, or something like this. And as mentioned before, I think for many others, for example, people in developer or design roles, the certifications and the need to maintain them can feel a bit daunting. So providing some kind of smaller crash courses, as said before, on accessibility with reliable information, I think that is a good direction. Would probably help a lot of people who are interested. And of course, for those who are pursuing a full-on career in accessibility, maybe a mentoring program or a more interactive platform for sharing information, something like this.
Yeah, mentoring is something I always feel ashamed that my generation haven't done enough, and especially not me. We should all, take on young students. There are a couple of things happening. So in the German-speaking chapter, they are doing a specific activity or a program for students. So students at the university level to promote accessibility and make sure they get some kind of badge, or it's not a certification because that is requiring experience, but we have kind of made a pilot on how to make sure that they kind of start their journey. So that would be really interesting to see how that pans out. And also in the Nordic chapter, we have in one of our committees, we have an idea of supporting students and kind of meeting students and letting people who have a couple of years of experience in accessibility tell them what it is like to become an accessibility expert, how work life is, and so on. So I think there are ideas around how to support students and really young people. It's not the core focus of IAAP from the beginning, but I think we all agree that it's also an important thing that we should try to do more of. So I like that idea. And Biljana, what do you think? How can we best support the accessibility community moving forward?
I will join the last two comments because first of all, my own experiences when I decided to go in accessibility is that I didn't know where to go. I tried to look on the internet. I found some resources. I didn't know what are the good ones, where to start. I didn't have idea what it means to be accessibility expert. I imagined it differently. When I started to work, it was something else. So it's true, this is something that is really missing. And second is that you're already doing a good job when it comes to meeting the end users and accessibility experts, but it's really, I think, we need more of that. We need to include them more. And in my experience, in everyday experience, it's something that it's really missing. We are doing the job, but we don't have the feedback. Are we doing a good job or not? So I didn't say anything new that was not said already, but I'm just joining the general two needs that are very important for me.
Yeah. So I wrote down what you said. So to me, they were important parts. So, and I will give the last chance to Verónica to add more things to this. We already have a long list of things, but how can we best support the community? And then I would just put this list in front of Christopher, and then it will magically happen.
That's great. That's how things happen. So for me, it's one of the things that I think where IAAP can focus is like not only accessibility on the digital environment, only about websites and documents, but also like from more like intersectional side. So accessibility on video games. I was really surprised that there was a call of papers recently about accessibility on video games. This was something that while I was thinking about this, it already happened. So that's great that it's being also checked on, or also, for instance, accessible board games, for instance, or accessible playgrounds, accessible things for, I mean, like media for our kids. So the topic is so broad that we can just take it to any other space that we are currently focusing on, not only about banks and insurances, but more like everything, right? Like we always want to have fun. We all want to meet our colleagues and have an amazing time. So it doesn't necessarily need to be about the must do things in life, but also more about the other things which are surrounding, which are also connecting us with other people. So I would say, yeah, I think this is already like being part of it. I was really surprised that it was like call for papers for accessibility on video games. And I think it's like one of the many examples where accessibility just plays a great role.
Thank you. And I just wanted to state that when we started IAAP, the idea was not to only focus on digital. We wanted to be kind of a holistic view on this. We haven't really succeeded on that, but our first chair of the Global Leadership Council was Jay Cardinali from Disney. So we have been doing tourism things, and we also started on a certification for the built environment. That didn't really work out the way we wanted. So we are now kind of, again, focusing too much, in my view, on the digital part. But it's not like we don't want to do more. It's just this is where we have found the most members, the most money, the most demand, if you will. So that is why we are still kind of regurgitating the same thing in digital, and it's enough to do. I know the topic is big enough, but really we would be very happy, more than happy to do more things on accessibility and kind of a broader approach to the whole topic. So I'm sure that will happen in the future. We have one question from the audience around apprenticeship. I can't say that. Now I'm too tired, or it's too difficult. Apprenticeship, I think is the word in English that I'm trying to say, in the UK. And we do have a UK chapter, and I know that Atos in the UK, Neil Milliken, who is also part of our Global Accessibility Global Leadership Council, he has been working quite a lot on apprenticeships, and I think that the UK chapter leads would be the best way to move forward. And if you can't find them, then just reach out to me and I will connect you, because I'm not aware enough of what is happening on the ground in the UK.